So welcome everybody to today's class, and it's really exciting. We're going to be talking about sleep habits. So many things happen because we get a good night's sleep. And so for some people, it is just an insurmountable task is to get that sleep. I looked it up on the dictionary to see what the actual meaning or the definition of sleep is, oddly enough. And it says it's a condition of body and mind that typically occurs every night in which the eyes are closed, muscles are relaxed, and the activity of the brain alters, doesn't stop, it alters, and consciousness of the surroundings are temporarily suspended. And what that means is that whatever problem you have at the point of sleep, you carry that, it's suspended, right? You carry that through the whole night. So it's another 8 hours. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, and this is again a vast subject. We're not going to be able to cover everything about sleep, but we will touch on various notes and aspects of sleep that you might want to look into a little further and maybe get some more insight on how sleep is really that important to you. Because when things are at the point of sleep, what are you thinking about? Because the moment you drop off and you get into that sleep state, that last thought, you're going to be working on that for the next 7, 8 hours. And we're going to be looking at the various ways on how we can curb that. The definition also goes a little further by saying it's also a state compared to death, complete silence and stillness. Because it is a death in one way, because this is where we sort of what they call fall asleep. We never sort of run into sleep. We don't jump into sleep. We fall asleep, almost giving the suggestion that it is a point of release. It's a point that we're just letting something go so much that we're falling. When we do that, what actually happens? It is a break from us to get out of this world. Because every time we're awake in our alert times, those 16, 17 hours that we're awake, the whole world is breaking us down in some way. There's stresses, there's, if we go to the gym, there's workouts that we do. And this is another thing about working out. Many people think that you're getting stronger in the gym. But that's not actually the case, because in the gym, that's where you stretch your muscles, you go the distance, you tear minute parts of your muscle, ligaments, and so on, not to the point where there's injury, but there is some form of minor damage. And the sleep looks at that, repairs itself, and realizes, okay, the reason it tore was because it wasn't strong enough. So your body adjusts and making you stronger. So you actually get stronger in sleep state. The time where so that's really what you're doing. You're trying to go the limit and do so many more things in that wake state so that the sleep will counterbalance all of that and you'll come out stronger than before. So it's like an out of body experience. So where do we go when we go to sleep? I mean, it's so interesting when we look at the aspects of what actually happens. And what Spirit says is that that's the point where we get out of our body and we visit ancestors and we get those insights. We get all the things that we need that, yeah, you're on the right path. All the confirmation things that people are asking for. Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Well, you can ask that in your awake state, but really when you ask that while you're sleeping, you'll get that confirmation on your own. Sure, you can ask a person like myself or a psychic or someone like that who can sort of tap into it, and you can just get that validation. However, it's so nice when you can do it yourself, and that's really where I come in. I'm more of a teacher. I'm not a healer or anything like that. So I like to teach people how to do this. And we always said, if I could do it, really anybody can. It just takes focus. It just takes a little time for yourself. And carve out that time that it is just as important as a meal. It's just as important as waking up, stretching, and doing your morning routine, is having that 10 minutes of silence. Now, whether it's meditation or just looking out the window, looking at the blue jays or the cardinals or whatever birds are outside your window, and just appreciating the fact that they're there. And the whole other thing sort of comes in. The next question I'm always asked is, what is the length of time that sleep really is appropriate? Some people, and I know people that sleep 4 to 5 hours and they can't do more. They are just so hyper, so riled up that they don't need a lot of sleep. They can't sleep, they said. Generally, it is true that if we just give one number, whether it's 8 hours or 7 hours to everybody, it is about an individual choice. How long does it take for you to rejuvenate? A younger person wouldn't need as much. However, it depends, again, what they do in those couple of hours just before sleep. In other words, if you're doing sort of a marathon and then you wait 15 minutes and then go to sleep, yeah, that's not going to be any good, because you need to sort of wind down. There's a cooling off period. And personal trainers say this all the time. When you're exercising and you've been pushing it and you've been killing the weights, you've been really doing high cardio, you don't just stop and say, okay, my workout is over, let's go in the change room. There's going to be another, let's say 15, 20 minutes of cool down where you're just relaxing and doing those things that are cooling down and bringing your muscles to a point where, okay, now it's just like turning off an engine while it's at 5,000 RPM. Not always the best thing. If you have turbo, if anybody knows anything about turbo, if you do that with turbo, the motor could explode. If you rev it to 5,000 RPM, then just turn off the engine. And all that pressure is now inside, and if it could be strong enough to actually blow that header. And then your body's like that, where we need that time just to rev things down, almost down to an idle, and an idle for another 5 minutes, in this case. And then you go to sleep. That would work. For a young person, yeah, they might not need 8 hours, but it all depends how active they are. So it is an individual choice, and you've got to sort of determine which one works. Well, here's a quick lesson here on what happens when a person, let's say, goes to sleep at midnight. What happens to that? Well, first of all, there's an inner clock. All of your organs have an inner clock. I'm not sure if you know this. Your heart has a certain way and a certain optimal hour that it performs the best, and it's in the afternoon. But at 11 o'clock at night, your gallbladder kicks in, and that's the first organ that it starts to clean and clear itself. The gallbladder is so important when it comes to energetically releasing resentment. Let's go of guilt. Let's go of this, many over and above the chemical things that it's doing. It's the energetic stuff that we're going to be more talking about today, because you can always look up things on the internet of what the gallbladder physically does. But the gallbladder is there for an energetic purpose as well. When we look at resentment, when somebody works and works and works and just thinks that they're going to get praised, or they're going to have some kind of appreciation at the end and nobody cares, eventually you'll say, well, why am I working so hard? Then there's that energy of resentment in that person. And when that comes in there, it goes right in the gallbladder. And it's toxic. It is a toxic energy. And over a long period of time, it will start affecting the physical chemicals of the gallbladder. So between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., the gallbladder does its cycle. By 11 o'clock, you should be at a point where you're just drifting off to sleep and you're just in that calm state for optimal clearing and clearing purposes. Okay, so it's 11 to 1 o'clock. So from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that's where the liver kicks in. This is where all the toxins that you've eaten, drank, you breathing, air, all that stuff. And it is absolutely amazing how incredible important the liver is, because it is like the aquarium filter in an aquarium. It takes out all of the gunk and so that the water doesn't turn all green. Okay, that's what it does. And the liver has had its own transition over the last many centuries to make it as efficient as it is, because I mean, 1,000 years ago, there wasn't all these chemicals that were in the soil, in the air, in the water. So the liver performed differently. If you were to take someone from 1,000 years ago and bring them into today's society, they probably wouldn't last 2 or 3 days. They'd have severe abdominal pain because the liver is so pure, and with all the toxins that are in the water and in the air and so on, the liver can only do so much, and it would just like sort of seize up. It's like it, but our liver has grown accustomed, and that's it. It's self healing. It does its thing. And that's why it's so efficient. So it can take actual poison, filter it, and if it's in the right way, it'll disparage it. It'll turn it into something else, and that takes practice. That takes a lot of evolution for our organs to do that. So from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. is your liver. So here's the thing: if a person is up at midnight, by the time they go to sleep, you've already missed the cleansing of the gallbladder, so that's kind of written off. Then the gallbladder then backs up and gives that to the liver. Here you go, I couldn't do anything, and just sort of tosses it over to them. And between 1 a.m. and 3, if you're not in that REM state, when what REM is rapid eye movement. This is that deeper state, and although you could see it through your eyes and all of that, from an energetic perspective, you have already left your body. You're already in spirit form when that hour happens, or hopefully it happens. If you're still not in that rapid eye movement when the liver is going through its thing, you're going to miss some of that as well. Half of that efficiency will be lost just because you're still kind of up. You're not really in that deep state, and so your liver is going to suffer. So then from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., your lungs kick in because it's all about clearing all those things that you've breathed in, all those things, and it just cleanses it all through those capillaries, and then goes through your blood system and ends up in your urine and your deposits and so on. And then from 5 a.m. to 7, in that area, that's when your lower intestines or your large intestines have their time, is when it just cleans everything out. And again, it's like a domino effect. If you're a little late in the liver, it pushes back, and then it doesn't get it in the lungs, and it just sort of knocks all your things out of whack. And of course, the large intestines is all digestive. We know that if your digestive tract is not working very well because of a lack of sleep, then this will create a lot of deposits that are just not going through. And we've heard of cases where you have the deposits sometimes 2-3 feet long in some cases, where you need operations to take some of that out, or a cleansing time just to get that out. These are foods that have basically your body has said is waste products, and that's where it all goes. But it needs to have that efficiency for it to work well. All right. So this is where that 7-8 hours of sleep is optimal, especially after you're 30, 35 years old. And chances are that's when you're working the long hours, you got a family and you're really working it. And perhaps the sleep isn't going to be that much in terms of that efficiency. So it's really important at that time to get your 8 hours of sleep. So by, let's say, 10 o'clock, you're in that winding down stage, and by 10:30 you should be kind of in that area where you're going to bed. By 11 o'clock you're already falling asleep, and then your whole cycle can start and do its thing. But the other thing is that all these chemicals, well, what happens when we don't do that sleep problem, that sleep state, then all the beneficial chemicals start to react, and it's reduced by up to half. So many chemicals, like the things that we know is serotonin. Other ones are melatonin and arginine, vascusin, and epithymin. These are other ones, and there's many, many others. But I want to touch on a few that you know already, just so we're not dealing with sort of abstract chemicals. You've heard this. Oh, wait a second. So you've heard of this. For dopamine, we've all heard of dopamine, all right? Dopamine is when we get that, it's a reward hormone almost, and it's that hit that we get when something happens that's in our favor. All right. When we have a lack of sleep, then we procrastinate more. Oh, I can do that tomorrow. And even people that were so good at checklists and everything else, as soon as they start having a deprived sleep, they start putting things off more. So it's not so much a behavior as because there's very little dopamine. There's half of the dopamine that you normally would get that you're just on top of things. And now I don't feel like it, you know? Another one is low self-esteem, lack of motivation to do stuff, mood swings. You go from feeling really good and then something comes in the mail. Maybe it's a it's a bill from Hydro or from some company, and then right away there's anger or something. So we had these huge swings, that kind of thing. Fatigue, inability to focus. All right, when we don't focus as much, the feeling of anxiety and the feeling of hopelessness, but short term. Even a positive person, like you just feel like kicking the ceiling all the time, you'll have short bouts of, oh, gee, I hope this will work. And you have that very, very small window. Oh, no, it's okay. No, it'll work. But you have to work at it. It's not as easy with the lack of sleep. Another one that you know is oxytocin. And this is that feeling of love and feeling of that. So you feel more lonely when you have this particular enzyme that's a little deficient. More stressed, again, low energy, feeling disconnected from relationship and even from yourself. You know, this is sometimes where people will say, I just can't connect to myself. I just can't, I don't feel like I'm myself. And when you feel like that about yourself, you have a hard time connecting to spirit. Whenever I have a lack of sleep, it's harder for me to connect to spirit. And I notice that right away. So there's always things that we can do on that. Serotonin's another hormone there that releases in your brain. If that is deficient, low self-esteem, oversensitive, means you just the littlest things will set you off. You're just like, you're so sensitive to things. It's it just is, there's swings that way as well. Social phobia means you don't want to go outside. You don't want to talk to anybody. How many times have you heard that? I just don't want to feel like talking to anybody today. I don't feel like to do. Well, that they have a lack of serotonin. Another was endorphins. You've heard of that. Okay, these are when you feel that, the endorphins, usually with the proper endorphins, you feel powerful, you feel good. But this one, you feel more aches and pains. Oh, I get a sore back, a sore shoulder. And even if a person isn't always susceptible to complaining, but they'll start doing these kind of things because of a lack of endorphins. Impulsive behavior. Now, this is where we get into so many things. When you start to change the impulsive behavior, you start doing things that you normally don't do, like drink and drive or text and drive. And even if it's important, where you are actually knowing that you're tired, you shouldn't be driving, people do it anyway. The last I heard, and I don't know how accurate it is, perhaps Mike might know, he deals with the driving part, but the last statistics I heard is 48% of the people that are driving on the road today are a lack of sleep. They're almost at the point of falling asleep while they're behind the wheel. And so that's a big deal. Like, I mean, you might not notice it, but when you go to sleep and you're tired, and for whatever reason you're stressed or there's things going on and you don't just have a sort of an inner ecosystem, you're waking up tired too. So imagine what it would be like if you plug in your phone at night and it says 10%, and you have it plugged in all night, and then you wake up and now it's 12%. Would you use that phone for the day? Probably not. You're hoping that, okay, there should be a charger in my car. If I get to the office, if I'm going there, I know there's a charger. Then there's always so much focus on charging our devices, but who's charging you? I know people that when they wake up, they're just as tired as when they went to bed. And then they get into a truck, the 18 wheeler, and they're driving, 60,000 pounds of like it's daunting how many are. If you just look at some of the videos about people sleeping behind the wheel, there's videos on this where a guy is following a truck and he's all over the road, not drunk, just tired, keeps falling asleep. But when we have that decrease in endorphins, we don't notice very obvious things that we would normally be very sensitive to. We just do it. We just do it. Like we know that we shouldn't be texting while we're driving, but we those endorphins, they're not there to say not good, not good. Like there's no ringing bell anymore. I'm not making any excuses for the people that are doing that, but all we're saying is that something as simple as just getting a good night's sleep can solve a lot of these problems. So that's one end there. So even when lives are at stake, and we see people that are doing pretty serious things, and it's all because of a lack of sleep. So when we also look at the concept of letting go, how many people have heard that, yeah, that one relationship I had, I just can't seem to let go of John or Mary or whoever. The relationship didn't turn out that well, and I just can't seem to let it go. With those reduced endorphins and all these other chemicals that your brain naturally produces that are really depleted, you can't let go of things. So it's, and then of course we turn around and we say, I don't know what's wrong with me, Tony. I just can't let go of X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And one of the questions I'll ask, and among many, is, are you getting a good night's sleep? Are you dreaming? Yeah, I do sleep, but I don't dream anymore. And that's a signal right off the bat. If you're not dreaming, it means you're not really in that REM sleep. It means either you're going to bed too late or you're watching the phone so close to bedtime that the blue light that the device emits, it's keeping you awake for another hour and a half up to. So if you're going to bed at 11, you're not really hitting that REM until 12:30, and before your body kicks in and realizes it's already 1 o'clock, you've already missed the gallbladder mode in terms of the cleansing. When your brain goes through that stage, when you're in that out-of-body experience, because we do sleep, and whether we remember our dreams or not, there is still some form of your energetic body leaving. And when that happens, what actually happens there is your body doesn't go up like some people will think. It actually comes down. And this is why one of the things that we look at when we go into a home is what's under your bed. What kind of things do you have under there? Some people will have their thigh buster. They'll have their taxes from many years ago sitting under there. They'll have all kinds of junk and clothes that they don't wear anymore, and they're wondering why they can't lose weight. But when your energy goes into whatever's under your bed, it's very important that whatever's there, your energy is picking it up. Oh, that's why I can't wear these clothes, because they're too small. But someday I'll fit into them. And you never do. You ever notice that? Many people never do fit into the clothes that they are holding on to, figuring that someday they will trim down and be able to wear them again. But energetically, if it's under your bed, it's a lack energy, knowing that this is why you're not there, sort of thing. So the other thing is what's underneath the room that you're in. In other words, is your bedroom on the second floor, and underneath your bed where you're sleeping, let's say there's the kitchen. I get this a lot with people that are having eating disorders. And where exactly is that? So when I go into a home, I'll look at, okay, where the bed is and where your bed is, if I were to bring that down to the main floor. And most times it's near the fridge or the stove or on the counter, but some area of the kitchen. So as long as we understand that, I says, oh, okay, then we need to put up signs that says, I'm sexy. I have pictures of you when you were younger. I'm going to be just like that. But what's usually around there? there's nothing. It's just every time you open the fridge, you're looking for a snack. And then in that sleep state, it does the same thing because your energy is down there. Facing the entrance door of your bedroom. In other words, where your headboard is in your bedroom, you should be able to lift your head and see the door in front of you or to the side. But in other words, it's we call it the point of power. And in other words, you don't want your bed beside you. So you're sleeping this way and the door is right to your left or to the right, where you have to actually turn your head to see the entrance coming into the bedroom. Does that make sense? And what that is an energy that things will always blindsight you. Oh God, I got my tax return. Oh, I'm supposed to pay $6,000 in tax. I went to drop off my car. They said it would be $500. Oh, it's now $1,200. You know, in other words, there's always surprise energy. And so we always try and position the bed in the room so it faces the door, sort of thing. And same with the desk into an office. Okay, we always do it that way. The other thing is phone charging. That's another thing that can keep an energy awake. If you, most people have a nightstand right next to their bed, and it's about like literally 2 feet or sometimes a foot away from your head, where all the things are happening with your brain. Your brain never stops, by the way. Your whole body shuts down in a skeletal operation, but your brain works 24/7 all the time and loves it. Just loves the work. But if you're a foot away or 2 feet away from a charging phone, that EMF is disrupting the electrical impulses of your brain. So get that phone out of the room. If it's possible, I mean, some people will say, well, geez, I gotta get a phone call. What if somebody calls, if it's family or, that's my alarm clock or whatever, then keep it at least 8 feet away from your body and not 8 feet away from your head, because keep in mind, you're 5 or 6 feet long and you can't put it, 5 or 8 feet away from your head because your body's still there. It has to be 8 feet away from your body, including your feet. Make sense? So put it on a dresser far away. And this is good too. So if it's an alarm clock, that means you got to get up to turn it off, not the snoozy button, right? All right. So it has many tasks that way. Another one is a TV in the room. What is the last thing you watch if you do watch TV? And some people have TVs in their room. They're watching the news or they're watching something. They turn it off and they go right to bed. Well, looking at the EMFs from the TV, when you turn off a TV, believe it or not, EMFs are still coming out of that TV for another, get this, 4 hours after you turn off the TV. Because what ends up happening to turn on the TV, it has to warm up all of these pixels and cells and whatever that's going on in there. It never used to be like that in the older days because we had what we call tubes. And most of the electrical impulses came out of the tubes and that. So when you turned it off, it was off, right? But we don't have that same technology. You won't find any tubes in the TVs that you have now. It's all electrical and it's all mini technology, which means it harbors, and they're mostly a capacitor. It harbors a lot of that energy. So it's still sending out EMFs for 4 hours. And usually when we measure the distance between a TV and a person's feet, if you're not going to watch TV on the side, it's usually at the end. So it's usually about 5 to 6 feet. And your feet constantly getting those impressions for another 4 hours, which means you're going to skip about 2 or 3 of your necessary cycles in your brain, the gallbladder, the liver. It affects so many things. And we're not even talking about what you were watching. If you were watching the news on some drive-by shootings and how the economy is going and what's happening with the vaccine and many other stories that are up there, and you're going to be in that energy for another 8 hours in your dreams. So I always make it a point that, okay, if you really want a TV and let's say you just can't live without it. I mean, we don't want to make more stress because we've tried cases where we've really insisted on a person to take the TV out of the bedroom, and they said, oh, okay, fine. They were miserable. And I says, okay, well, we don't want stress. So let's choose something that's sort of halfway. Is there any way that you could put on something that you like, I don't know, like, so was there a show that makes you laugh? Was there a show that is like funniest videos where you see dogs and cats doing funny things? Yeah, that's better than the news. Okay, if I mean we have to take it, we take it for what it is, and we'll give the best solution based on what a person's open for. Okay, so that's the best. So what you want to do is fall asleep happy. You want to fall asleep that you're in a zone, and you feel love, or you feel togetherness, or you feel a mission is on. Those are all good. All right, but you don't want current events right when you're going to sleep. That's just not what we're shooting for there. Okay. The other thing is grounding. We're gonna touch on this real quick. Now, what is grounding? I mean, we've all heard when you are taking off your socks and shoes, going out in the backyard, and walking in soil for a little bit, and your body charges so quickly in your bare feet. If you have hardwood floors everywhere, that's good too, even though it's not outside. If you look at how the hardwood floor is connected to the house, it's usually nailed into the floor. The floor is then connected to beams, and beams are connected to the cement and into the ground. So it's not the best grounding. However, there is a connection rather than carpet. Carpet, especially synthetic or polyester or whatever, different types of carpet, synthetic products, then there's no connection. And what is usually we see under a bed is maybe a hardwood floor, and there's this huge area rug that the bed is on. So the last few minutes, you're walking up to your bed and you're all grounded, and then you step on this carpet, you're not grounded, and then you might stay there for a little bit, then you put your feet up. You're not really grounded. The bed isn't even grounded because it's on the carpet. So another good alternative for this is to get what we call a grounding mat. And this is like a bed sheet that you can put in your room. Here, I'll just show you a picture of it here real quickly. For those that are listening, if it's a podcast, this is what you can get on Amazon. And you can get them anywhere. Amazon was just the quickest one that I could find. And here's one. It's it's a 100% conductive carbon leatherette grounding mat. And it just, as you see, it just goes over your bed with an elastic. And the real cool part is that if you went to hook it up, so the idea then is this part. Oh, where am I going here? Oh, here. The idea is this part here where there's a connector on one end in number 2. That is like a wire. You hook that on there. The whole mat is grounded, and then it's plugged into your outlet in the grounding. So it's that third prong hole in your outlet. There's no power there because that is the grounding part of the home. And to ground a home these days, you have to drive in usually an 8 or a 10 or more foot rod in the ground. And then there's this copper wire that's tied to it and then hooked up to your panel box. All right. So that's grounded. That way there's less fires and it's safer and so on. So that's what you're kind of tapping into. You're plugging it into the outlet that's actually grounded in the ground. All right. And this way, this is what I use. And it's been really life-changing. It's just amazing how well that works when so you put your mat on it, and then you put your sheet over that. And what the Spirit recommends is linen. Try to stay away from fake cottons or polyester cotton blends because it's more synthetic and it doesn't have very high of a vibration. Last week in our self-healing class, we talked about the different fabric vibrations, and linen was by far the highest vibration for healing, rejuvenation, your sleep is better, and about 20 other things. So linen is the best. It is expensive, but you buy it once. Like you could have linen literally for 50 years. Your grandmother bought one, a really good quality in 1956. You probably still have it and it's still great. So that's one of the great things about linen. And you put then your sheet over top of this mat, and then your pillowcase is also linen. And then when you get to bed, you're grounded. Even though there is a layer, linen is a conductive force as well. So it's just like you're sleeping in the backyard, which is what we did in our ancestors. We slept in caves many moons ago, and we were on the ground in tents and in places where you're constantly grounded, surrounded by wood. Everything's conductive. Okay, so this is a great alternative, and it's like $80. I've been using mine, and my ability to connect, I feel great in the morning. I used to have back pain. I don't remember the last time I had back pain. I had some shoulder stuff going on because of the work that I do. There's always a lot of energy trying to push me down, but that's gone too. So all night over 8 hours, you're grounded. And so that's one item. They also have some stuff for during the day when you're working. You have mats underneath your feet in your office. So if you have like bare feet, you can put it on a carpet, and then this mat also plugs into the outlet, and then you've got your grounding right there. They have it in mouse pads and different types of products that way. But this way, I like the sleep part because it doesn't require it doesn't require effort. You just go to sleep and you're done. You don't have to think about it. But I've had mats underneath my desk, and it's all rolled up, and it's sort of always a hassle, I find, and I'm not always on it. So if I get up and get something to eat or whatever, I'm not on the mat. So I find that the mattress cover is probably the best because I'm on that constantly for that 7 or 8 hours. So that I would recommend it that way. Okay. Also, between the hours of 2 ultimately and 4, that is the thinnest veil between our physical reality and spirit and sort of heaven. Okay, that's the thinnest part of our time. And so luckily, if you go to bed, the right time, or whatever right is right for you, and you're well into that REM sleep, and it hits 2 a.m., that's when you start getting those dreams, those images, and those things that you've been asking for, especially if you're feeding it. I would like to manifest whatever it is, a home. I'd like my business to do better, and whatever it is that you want. And you program yourself that way as you fall asleep. Well, between the hours of 2 and 4, that's the best time to start receiving some of those messages in dream state. And you'll get, it's all metaphoric, obviously. You're going to get all kinds of things about that. Just to give you just a quick lesson about that, just before we get into our meditation, if you wake up, and let's say the room has some dim, it's not like the sun's barreling in if you have a shade or something. Make sure you don't look at the light. If you have a dream in your head and you want to remember it, as soon as you look at the light, it's gone and you won't remember it because the light transforms the dream state and it's back into ether. You have to write it down. So to do that, if you have a pad of paper or just something, and shade your eyes, and then just write down what I call tags. So it doesn't have to be word for word. You could say things like cabin, lake, smoke, pier, water, waves, and so you get a picture just with the words I'm saying of what this looks like in morning. And there's a canoe, there's loons. You sort of get a picture of it, right? That way, when you eventually see the light, you could look at the tags, and it's like breadcrumbs. You can go back and then you can remember the dream. But if you don't write it down, you will not remember it. That's one little trick. All right. Try and shade your eyes. Don't look at the light, and just write down whatever your dream was, and then you'll remember it. Okay, 6. Just a real quick 6 good habits to have every day regarding sleep. First of all, wake up early. That's one of the first things that farmers do. So if you're waking up early, well, so what is early? I would say 7 or earlier would be, I would say early. If you can get up at 7 o'clock at the latest, then that would be good. But the best is like 6 a.m. and that. But to do that, to get your 8 hours, that means you got to be asleep by 10, in bed by 9:30. In other words, to get your 8 hours, everything's got to move back so your clock can still work properly, right? So waking up early, writing down thoughts before you go to bed. That's really important. 1 hour a day, move, exercise, and just do things to keep yourself active. Sitting in silence for at least 10 minutes every day. It doesn't have to be meditation. It could be, but if you don't like to meditate, or if you fall asleep meditating, or it's just boring, then just sitting quiet. Look at the birds in the backyard. Some people will look out the window and just watch people, or in the park, watch kids in the park swinging. Whatever it is, take 10 minutes and just don't think, and just be in that state of receiving and noticing what the world is doing. Take a walk is another one, and then read 10 pages in a book. That's one of the first things. Now, there's one technique I want to do this, because we have a great technique. I call it the pillow technique. And what it is you write down an intention. You write down one thing that you want, whatever it is. If you're in an apartment and you want to buy a house, let's say, or if you're always walking and you're taking your bike in the summer and you're walking long distances in the winter and you really need a car, whatever your needs or wants are, write it down in the form of, this is what I want and why. But what a lot of people do, I wouldn't say most people, what a lot of people do is they'll say, I just want $1 million. When you look at an intention and you define it as dollars, be really careful with that, because what Spirit is saying, money is corrupt. The state of money, the thing of money itself, yes, it does buy things, but overall, money is exchanged, and a lot of it is been corrupted energetically. I'll give you a few things. People die for money. People deceive for money. They kill for money. They marry for money, even though they might not like the person. And we are all controlled by money. If you do X, Y, Z, then I'll pay you $1,000. And if you need the money, you're going to do it, right? But if you said, no, I don't think so. I need the money, but I don't need to do that. But that takes a lot of conditioning to go that far. But the vast population, when we look at the energy of money, try not to equate it to that. If something cost $1 million, like a home, then just say, I want a home. And why? Well, I wrote something down here real quick just to give you a sample of the type of intention we're looking for. So you write on a piece of paper something like this, and whatever this equates to you. I want a house of my own so I can reset my energies within. I want it for my kids so they can have a safe backyard to play in. I want to be a good neighbor so I can help my fellow homeowners if they need something that I can provide. And so you take that intention, you fold it up, and you put it under your pillow at night. When you sleep, the energy of that intention will filter through, and your mind, not your brain, but your mind will pick that up as energy and start going to work on that manifestation. Okay, do not put down dollars, because you put down dollars, it sort of cancels everything out, because it has a lot of other energies in there that we can't control. So put it to things that you want. Or I want a car, and the reason is just so I can get to work on time, that I don't have to rely on anybody, I don't want to bother anybody. I just want a car. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. I just want a reliable car that I could go to and from work, and I can get home faster for my family, and but the same intention, right? So in this particular time, going into a meditation, I want you to write something down that you want. One thing that you want right now, just on a little piece of paper. Okay, so take a minute just to jot something down on a little memo pad, or just a little note, something, maybe a sentence or two, or maybe you just know what you want and say, no, no, I want a house because it's this, or I want to go on a trip because it would just so rejuvenate me. I feel so great going on this trip. And why? Because it would fill up my batteries. It would make me see how other people feel, and the kind of foods they would eat, and bring in some emotion. Because all this that you're writing down is emotion, and it's energy that your body will pick up. You put that on a little piece of paper, and then I want you to put it on your receiving hand. So if you are right-handed, if you write with your right, your receiving hand is left. Right? Whatever you write with is giving. So you write a check and you give a check to somebody. When you're paying a bill and you're giving, usually will count with your right hand. When you're receiving money, when someone says, here's a check, you usually will bring out your left hand if you're right-handed. So whatever your receiving hand is, put that piece of paper in that hand. Okay? And I'll just wait a couple of seconds just so you can get that little piece of paper ready. Okay?
Can you say that again with the left and right? I just got confused
Well, whatever
in my
whatever
head.
you write with, it's the other
Mhm.
hand.
Okay, so I'm left-handed, so I have to write it with my right.
That's right. If you're writing something with your right hand, then it's the other hand. Like I usually say, whatever you
I'm
write with,
left-handed.
right,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
is right, and whatever's left is left. So
Oh,
it's not your writing hand, if that's the case. Okay.
okay, so I have to write that on that piece of paper on my right hand.
If you're right-handed, yes. If
I'm
if
left-handed.
if you're right-handed, then just write it down. But your receiving hand is the other hand.
Yeah, but what do we do with that?
You're
I'm
just going to
confused.
put it in your hand. You're just going to put it in your hand.
Ah,
And I want you to write
okay.
it down first, so you have your want on the piece of paper. Then you put that want on the piece of paper in your left hand, and just
Under
hold
the
it. That's
meditation.
all. Just hold
Okay.
it. You're just
Okay.
holding energy.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, this was a little longer than I figured, but I really wanted to get a lot of this stuff in because this is such a vast topic. Okay, I'm assuming everybody's ready. Okay, Eve. Okay, so just put it in your hand. Take a nice deep breath. Breathe in the color purple. This is the same vibration as spirit. All right, because we're going to be doing something that will start to bring in this high vibration of spirit. Okay, take a nice deep breath of purple, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Okay, you slowly come out of the state that you're in. Just take your time. Try and remember what you felt, what you saw, what you sensed. Just come back into the room. Now, it wouldn't be uncommon. Some of you may have fallen asleep. That's why we chose the moonlight, because that's another energy that is in our sleep time, is in our rejuvenation time. So that's good. So did that help when you had that piece of paper in your hand? Did you get any visions, anything that was sort of out of the ordinary normally? I'm in a basement now, and when I came down here, it was cool. I have a very cool basement, and I'm sweating. Just, so it's just it was there's so much going on. Your body whole feels it, and this was the first time I used this particular one because I got the direction from Spirit to do it in this way with the. I usually do the pillow technique, but this one is a new one, having a piece of paper on your hand while you're doing it. So it was interesting. And this
Thank
this
you.
is this is one thing when we have a lack of sleep, it affects just so many things. From an energy thing, it's we can't let go of the things we want. Even if it's an abusive relationship, this is one of the reasons Spirit is saying that in many abusive couples where the person being abused, male or female, they don't leave because they don't get a good night's sleep. It's always very toxic when they're going to sleep. They're just realizing, oh, how can I get out of this situation? And that's how they're falling asleep. So they're worrying about it for 8 hours. They wake up and they're just as exhausted. So their ability to make decisions. Okay, do you see how it's really hard to say, no, I'm going to move from this relationship? Well, this is from a person that's well rested. I mean, if you talk to a person that's well rested, it's so clear. Just leave. That's what you hear. How come you're still there? Why are you still getting your head kicked in and you're not sure whether you're going to come home drunk and beat you and that I would have been gone long ago. You're not living in that situation. I'm sorry. And it's like it goes to the same adage as where, you got to be in that person's shoes. If you're not getting the sleep, your ability to decide to leave or not, and to make other important decisions isn't there. It's half or less. So it's really important when you get a good night's sleep somehow. And this is another thing. I'm only thinking about this now because I had this one client years ago where it took her, 2 years. We were working together for 2 years, and it's not something that Spirit is always pushing, but she always wanted, some assurance that things are going to get better, and we always came to it meeting to try and find insight. The reading was always just leave. But they didn't say it that way. They said, "What are some of the options?" We says, "Well, I could leave," and they said, "Spirit says that would be appropriate." Okay, that's the way they are. But she never could. And then what happened was the abuser had left for a week on a business trip, and then she was able to get that rest after the third day, and all of a sudden it's only dawning on me now that since she got the rest, that's how in that week she was gone. By the end of the week, she had taken whatever she could together and went to a shelter and did the move. And I says, you finally did it. Great. I never equated it until just now that it was because all of a sudden she got sleep. That could be one way, but once that happens, then there's a whole host of other things that come into play with all the serotonin, oxytocin, everything at full levels. Now she has the energy to move, has the capability, has the decision. So the physical, mental, emotional part of you is now full up. It's all gassed up. Before it was like at 10%. It was almost empty because she never knew whether she, in the middle of the night he would just beat her for no reason, and that was a reality. So she was always very attentive, never had a REM sleep, obviously. So yeah, in that situation, as soon as you get your sleep, then you sort of wake up in that way. And the other thing is when you're sleeping at night, that's when the moon energy is most prevalent. And when we sleep, our energies go to that moon energy. When it's reversed, okay, sorry, let's go further. So when we get out of that out of body experience at night, we have that moon energy. And in the daytime, we have the masculine energy of the sun. But when we switch it over, when we're actually sleeping in the masculine energy, which is all fire and get going, and we're up when it's calm and the female energy over the moon, it's really tough because that's just not our evolution sort of thing. That's just that's really tough is when you're doing it with that much change. Is that your question? I hope I've answered it. But
Tony,
is it because
I
you said
kept
about
on falling asleep during the meditation.
yeah, that's okay because that was on purpose. That the spirit wanted to show you when you fall asleep, what are you falling asleep to? So you had about roughly 45 minutes of various insight on parts of your body, and your body was starting to calm down. And then right near the end, we talked about the intention, and you wrote your intention, and then you fell asleep. And then, of course, they wanted to mimic that and what would happen when you actually fall asleep tonight. And so when you apply it that way, it's going to be very powerful. So when you slept, it was almost equivalent to about 4 or 5 hours of sleep when you woke up
Mm.
because you felt refreshed when you woke up, even though it was only like 15 minutes, right?
Well, I kept on, I'd fall forward and then jump, and I would fall backward and jump, and then I go to the side and jump. And eventually I just had to rest here and sort of sleep like this during.
Yes, yes, yes. Do you have arms in your chair? Or
I
is it?
do.
Oh, you
Yeah.
do? Okay. Well, yeah, but it's still, if you
I
had a
didn't fall out of the
recliner
chair.
or if you had a recliner where you can just lay back and then you can just fall
Yes.
asleep. But yeah, the spirit wanted to mimic what the sleep would be like. And this is exactly it. But what you don't want to do is get all excited with the news or with life and then go to bed. There has to be this wind down, something, music or whatever it is, or what works for me is very odd. I used to watch Newhart. It's a show that they had in the 90s, and it's a very calm, small town, episode, and it's laughter, but it's funny, and it gets my mind in a sort of a calm comedic state, and it's seeing the scenery. Where you see the car going through the mountains or the trees and stuff, it's very calming for me. I like the song. And so that works for me. What also works for me, oddly enough, is MASH, the show MASH. I'd watch a couple of episodes, have a few laughs, and then I'd have no problem going to sleep, even though they had, some episodes that were a little heavier and stuff, but there was a lot of laughter in it too. Now, that's what works for me. But there were times where, I had sort of a rough day and didn't have much time to unwind and just went straight to bed. I was up for an hour. I could not sleep because my body just didn't have that wind down. And I had the shaky leg thing going on. And then I wanted the feet out of the covers, then in the covers. And it's a wild sort of a circle. But yeah, you do need some kind of a wind down just so that your whole body can wind it. And so whatever does that for you, whether it's a small show, but try not to, if you have the chance, not to put a TV in your room. That's a big one because it's easy to turn it on and then you just watch anything. You're scrolling through it, and inevitably you're going to pass the news or someone getting shot or whatever, and it's just not what you want to experience in the morning. In the morning, you want to be able to be revitalized and say, okay, here's another day. Thank you, God, for another day. And I'm reprogramming my cells because over the night, you've got another 500 million cells that are wondering what to do. And so I says, okay, I'm strong, I'm positive, I'm going, this is the way we're doing things. We're very prosperous. We don't know what to do with all the money we have, sort of thing. And it's just constantly programming those new cells every morning. And by the time I go to a meeting, I have a meeting at 8 o'clock on Mondays and Wednesdays, Thursdays. And then by that time, I'm really up and ready to go. I have more energy than I can handle sometimes. But it's work. It's getting up and using that energy because that's what they want. And that's because of a good night's sleep. But you'll notice that if you get up a few times, Like, as men get older, we get up, 2, 3 times a night sometimes to go to the washroom, and then it sort of interrupts it a little bit. But it doesn't help when you have 96 liters of water just before you go to bed. You know? I usually have this mug of water just to hydrate, and I say, "Oh, wait a sec, that's not going to work. That's got to go through sometime." So, but yeah, so after 7 o'clock, I don't eat anything. I'll just drink, and yeah, you just drink water or whatever, but not too much. So you just have to limit that. But that sometimes you're right. It takes a bit to get through that. So sorry, I've taken up a lot of your time. I hope this was of value. If you have a chance, here I'll just post a couple of things that I have on my. There's the YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to that, every show that I do a recording of it and I post it on the Facebook site, and we upload it onto YouTube. I got the Spirit podcast that I do if you just want to listen while you're walking through the woods or something. And I have a special podcast just for meditation. It's also in the other one, but it's buried under 190 episodes of other stuff. But the meditation is only meditation. So you can pick the one you think that might be interesting, and then you can get right into the meditation part. So if you want to book some time with me, you can. And I want to thank some people that sent a gift last week. You don't have to, but it's always appreciated. Okay. So thank you very much, people. I love you. And I hope you have a great weekend. Hopefully it'll be sunny and that, but have a great weekend and get a good night's sleep. Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Tony. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Tony.
it.
Take care now. Okay,
Thank
bye
you.
now. Bye.
Bye.